about today's objective, what I mentioned a little bit earlier while I was on mute was that some of you may remember me from the GLS plenary that took place during the April conference a few months ago. We gave some information about communication during that conference, and now we want to introduce a new tool to you that's available to GLS grantees that's been almost 2 years in the making. I'm really excited about this. I'm still getting a little bit of feedback, so if everyone could please mute their phones, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So today, what are we going to cover? First and foremost, we're going to review the message map history and creation. Why did we even create this thing? What's the purpose of it? And then really present it to you. And we're going to walk step by step through this map. Make sure that when we all leave here today, we have a really good understanding of what this tool is all about and how you all can use it effectively. And finally, we're going to present some other available tools that are in the works that will be available to GLS grantees in the coming months. All right, so I see folks joining and some other folks muting the line. If you joined, please mute your phone to avoid background noise. So now I'd like to ask you all to take a little poll for me. I want to see who's on the line. We've got campus grantees, state grantees, tribal grantees. There may be some folks from SAMHSA and SPRC, and maybe even some others. So what I'd like you all to do is go ahead and take your cursors and complete this poll. Click on the item that best represents you as a participant. And in a moment, we'll get a sense of who's here on this call. So we'll just take a moment. I'm seeing numbers. All right. Let's see how we're doing. Oh, state grantees. You're by far and away. But we do have a nice representation across all grantee groups, and we have some folks from SAMHSA and SPRC too. And it's great that we have folks from SPRC on the line because near the end of this webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about safe messaging and reporting on suicide. And so I'm hoping that they all can help keep me honest. So what is a message map? We've really been kind of throwing this term around for the past 10 minutes or so. And I think it's important that we get on the same page with what this actually is. And it's really nothing more than a system for formally organizing any information that you need to compellingly communicate about an organization, a cause, a product, an issue, a service, basically a formal way to organize information about what you want to say about your work. And to break it down even further, it's really a cheat sheet for communicating key messages. It's a great tool that can help you identify the messages that need to be reinforced during any communication effort. And the beauty of a message map, which we really like, is that it's all on one page. It's a visual representation of everything in what we hope is a relatively simple format. And this message map is really available to all GLS grantees. It's available to prevention specialists, GPOs, really anyone. And the whole point and really purpose of us developing this is so that everyone involved in the GLS program, from the community level up to the federal level, can really begin speaking about this work in not only a compelling way, but in a consistent way. And that's a really important thing that I think is worth mentioning about the importance of message maps. And that is that it can really help do a number of key things if everyone sort of uses and adopts this thing in somewhat of a similar way. And ultimately, a message map can help elevate awareness and urgency around suicide and suicide prevention. We've got to get folks to care about this issue. Some care more than others, especially when we're talking about some key stakeholders or audiences of ours who might be a little disconnected from the importance of this work. It can help generate broad support for your work, not just suicide prevention, but your specific GLS program and grant and activities, which ultimately will help improve some of your outcomes and support your sustainability efforts. This notion of ensuring consistency in communication, which is the second to last bullet I just touched on a moment ago, but that's really key. How do we make sure that everyone who's talking about the great work that you're doing, whether it's at the federal level or at the local level, does so in a relatively consistent way? And that's really where we see the value of a message map. So why a message map, though? I mean, where did this whole thing come about? Again, it's a tool that many, many communicators use. It's also something that many organizations use for many of the reasons that I mentioned just a moment ago. It gets everyone on the same page. It makes a pretty consistent and compelling cheat sheet for an organization and its brand or what it stands for. And without it, people from the same organization or program end up talking about their work in a variety of ways. And I'm not talking just about, whether or not we identify as a GLS grantee or not. I'm talking about how we discuss and how we build dialogue around the great kinds of work and the programs and services and things that happen as the result of the GLS grant. Without it, we've got people telling 100 different stories in a pretty inconsistent way. So I like to think about it this way. I mean, we all know Nike's slogan is "Just Do It," right? So what if every single Nike store decided to have their own slogan, and each of their stores, had something different? So whenever you walked into a different Nike store, you'd be met with a different brand or a different slogan or a different message. Instead of I think that really would diminish the impact of the Nike brand and of the Nike product. So that's sort of a small and commercial marketing example, because the same really goes for your grant work. If we're all not on the same message, we're not making as big of a splash or an impact as we possibly can, because we know that many voices saying something is more impactful than one or two voices saying disparate and different things. And you all knew this too. We first started having conversations with you in 2010 about what you all needed from our team here at Gallup and the communication work that we do. As you know, we're a SAMHSA contractor. And you told us, we want a set of key messages we can use to talk about the importance of our work, and that really is verbatim. And from that, we started developing this message map. And we also asked you, great, you want these messages, who should they be for? Who do you want the audiences to be? Who are your key audiences? And you told us that policymakers, government influencers, institutional and community leaders are pretty much your top audiences. And then following shortly after, as you can see in this word cloud, are community and child serving systems, and then obviously the public and those that you ultimately need to reach. So armed with this information, we went to work on developing a message map for you. And I won't go into detail about the process, but some of the steps are listed up here. I mean, it's taken about a year and a half or so, and we've done a number of things. We first started with reviewing other suicide prevention organizations' communications and how they're talking about themselves to find out what makes you unique. And we learned that the really key and distinctive factor with the GLS work compared to some of the other suicide prevention efforts out there, both government and non-government, was that GLS really let you all tailor the work and the interventions and the activities that you did to the needs of your local communities. And that was something that I remember from those sessions as really rising to the top. From there, we conducted about 23 interviews with grantees, with SAMHSA staff, and with others in the suicide prevention field to get a sense of kind of what made GLS different. And then from there, we drafted a message map that was reviewed by SAMHSA and some other grantees, and it was previewed at last year's GLS Campus Conference. Some of you on the line may have been part of that session. So now we're just about finalized with it, and we're ready to share it with you. And we learned some really, really interesting things about your work and about how you felt about GLS and the work that you were doing. And we really used your words, your thoughts, your input to create this message map as something that we hope will be helpful for you. So with that, what does this darn thing look like? We've been talking about it for a while now. So here it is in all its jumbled, messy, hard-to-read glory. Now, I know what you all may be thinking, and that is, what on earth is this thing? And how on earth is it ever going to be applicable for me? How can I use it? Well, we don't want you to panic, because we know that that is a hot mess. We know that what I just put on the screen is by no means a best practice for how to clearly communicate, especially on a webinar. But it only looks more complicated than it is. We know it's not beautiful, we know it's not nicely designed, but the reason why it's presented in that format is, one, something that we'll go through today, and two, it's presented in that way so that you can really take it when we send it to you all and make it your own. You can take some of the language that's in there, you can take some of the data points that we'll talk about in a moment, and you can really tailor and tweak them to meet the needs of your specific program. So together, what we're going to do for the remainder of this session is go through that jumble of words step by step so that we make sure we are covering every component of this map and also talk about what are some instances or ways that you all can use it. Again, we ultimately want this to be a highly utilized tool for you that you can tweak as you see fit and use moving forward. And I will caveat by saying that some of the words and some of the language that you see in here honestly may or may not be applicable to you. And we know that, and that's okay. The point isn't for you to use every single element in this map, and I'll go back to it for a moment. We don't want you to jam-pack everything you develop with every single one of these messages. The point really is to get something on paper that, again, can be a cheat sheet. That could be something that your entire organization or your staff or even your volunteers can kind of look at and get behind and know what to say when people ask them, so what is it that you do and why is your work so important? So with that, the first step is really understanding when to use it. And I just shared sort of one basic example, but I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into that. So when do you use a message map? Well, you can use it when you need persuasive, compelling messages to describe the work your organization does so that others can either get on board, support your work, or actually act. You know, do you want them to do something? Do you want them to support you? Do you want them to get trained? What is it that you want people to do? This message map is intended to be used when you're trying to persuade people to do something. It can be used in a number of instances. For instance, media interviews, perhaps talking points for presentations, in any of your communication materials. A message map is really great for written pieces. Flyers, posters, brochures, any boilerplate language that you use to talk about your organization as a whole. Websites, PowerPoints, I mean really the full realm of communication materials are a really good place to pluck and pull elements from this message map. And then finally, things like elevator speeches for staff or partners or even presentations that you're developing to other stakeholders. But this is a really key point. And the key point is this map is not for external use. We don't want you handing this map out to your audiences. We don't want you giving it to a student. We don't want you giving it to a school administrator unless that school administrator or that student is a champion or an ambassador for your program and is speaking on behalf of your work. This map is really for you and your internal staff. If you kind of think of it as your own little secret, you know, it's your own little cheat sheet and secret that you can use. It's not intended for your audiences, and it should be provided to and shared with anyone who you want speaking on behalf of your work and who you think would benefit from having a set of messages from which they can pull as they go out and kind of promote the work that you're doing on your behalf. And you all too. So that's the first step, knowing when to use it and how to use it. The second step are the components, and this is where we're going to get a little granular with that mess that I just shared a moment ago. There are 4 components to a message map: a message platform, a core message, message pillars, and support and copy points. Here's sort of another way to look at that. If you think of a message map as a building, you'll see that there are a variety of different pieces that really make up the entire whole. And each component is really important and plays a key role in ensuring that the building stays standing. Now this same format can be seen in the actual map. Have your message platform, the core message.
We maybe just schedule
Oh, I'm hearing someone on the line. If you can all mute your phones, please, I'd appreciate it. So you've got your message platform, your core message, your message pillars, and your
Yeah, you know, that
copy.
might actually work.
Oh, I'm still hearing you. We're going to listen to someone's conversation. So these are really the same elements that you just saw in this image, except now we filled it in with the actual language. So let's go through these piece by piece and get a sense of what each piece is about, how it plays a role in the larger map, and when is the right time to use them. Let's start at the top here with the message platform. So the message platform is really, if you think of it sort of as the umbrella, it was, if you remember, the tip of that building I showed you a moment ago. It's the tippy top of the building and is the overarching idea that really captures how your work should be positioned, what's most compelling about it, and why people should ultimately believe in the work that you're doing. Let's take a look at your message map. So this is kind of like the message platform isn't necessarily something that you would say to other people, but it really encapsulates the essence of the GLS brand. So from the map, here is your message platform. SAMHSA's GLS grantees are essential to our national behavioral health agenda and dedicated to building and sustaining the nation's capacity, one community at a time, to prevent the 3rd leading cause of death among youth: suicide. So again, overarching idea, overarching umbrella notion of what GLS is and why it matters. As I said before, you might look at this and say, I love that word, I hate that word, I'd say it a little differently. That's totally fine. We just wanted to share something with you all that could be a foundation that you can build and tweak to meet the needs of your specific program. So what you're seeing is the very general message map that we've put together for GLS as a whole. So that's the message platform, and you'll see that up here. The same words I just read are up here. And you'll be getting a copy of this. That's much easier to read. So again, we do apologize how small this is, but we're hoping going through it piece by piece will kind of unpack it for you. So the next element is the core message, and that's right here in this green box. So the core message is really your single key message. It is what you want every single person to know about your work. If they can only know one thing, your core message is it. It defines the key points that bring your program to life and really builds appreciation and understanding among those you're trying to reach around what GLS is and why its work matters and why your work matters. Again, if you had only one thing to say, your core message is it. So here is the GLS core message from the message map. Through the Garrett Lee Smith Grant Program, SAMHSA connects communities and empowers individuals so they can reach out to young people who may be thinking about suicide. Grantees work through community-specific programs to replace the fear and anxiety associated with suicide with understanding, empathy, and early involvement. Grantees bring together communities, services, and individuals so that warning signs can be recognized and the necessary steps to save lives can be taken, and emotional health and well-being can be promoted. Again, all of this may be true, and while I think this is a fantastic couple sentences, you may only wish to use the first bullet or the second bullet or a line or two from here. And again, that's okay. That's really the beauty, as I said before, of a message map. No matter what you choose, you're able to at least land on some key core messages that you can share with the rest of your team and that build from the work that we've already done so that you're all perpetuating the same positive and important message about your work. Now, as I said before, you'll notice that our messages have GLS in them everywhere. And we know some of you don't outwardly identify with GLS specifically. And while we hope you'll consider doing so, because we know that a program of this size has more power when we all kind of rally around a name, we certainly understand that you each have your own identities and brands in your local communities, and we don't want to mess with that. But either way, again, the beauty of this tool is that wherever you see GLS in here, you can simply swap your program's name for it. For instance, we could say something like Tennessee Lives Count works through community-specific programs to replace the fear and anxiety associated with suicide. You could do it with your work as well. Just plop your name into wherever it seems applicable. In fact, when we send you this map, you can go on in there and change GLS and put the name of your program in there as well. So when might you use your core message? Let's go back to this core message for a moment. What I'd like you all to do is get your fingers nimble and get on your keyboard and type for me, please, some instances where you might use a core message like that. What are some opportunities you might have to share information like that? I'm waiting for some folks to start typing. At a task force meeting, at gatekeeper training, yep. As part of an elevator speech, that's another really great place to use your core message. Through our website, at a tribal council presentation, within a brochure, really during any presentations on your programs. Great, that's fantastic. Community partner meetings, advisory board meetings, all absolutely correct. That core message can really always be your go-to for a quick and easy way for you to talk about the work that you're doing. So I suggest that when this webinar finishes and when you receive this information, go back kind of into that, go into this core message and kind of think about how you might move some things around, change and tweak some of the instances of GLS in there to reflect your work so that you can really land on a core message or two from here that resonates with the people you're reaching and that speaks to the work that you do. And from there, you've got it. I mean, we hope we've done most of the hard work for you. And so now you can, again, just kind of cherry pick and tweak and modify and refine the language that's in here so that it reflects the name of your work and the specific efforts that you're undertaking. Fabulous. So the next piece, we've talked about a message platform. We've talked about a core message, which we just read through here. And again, the language I put on the prior slide is literally all found right in here. I've just blown it out for you, and I will throughout the rest of the presentation so it's easier to read. So the next piece are your message pillars, and you'll see them right here in these big blue boxes. Let's talk about message pillars for a moment. Now, message pillars enhance your core message with big picture ideas that start to create a more full-bodied view of what GLS is all about. It helps define some of the key points that bring your core message to life and start building appreciation among your audiences. So if your core message is the key takeaway, then the message pillars are the more specific reason why your core message is true. If you have 30 seconds, you say your core message. If you've got a minute, you've got a chance, or 2 minutes, or 5 minutes, you have an opportunity to dive into your core messages, your message pillars, rather. For instance, if our core message is, bringing together communities and services so that warning signs can be recognized and people's lives can be saved, then the message pillars essentially help you explain how you do this, how you bring together communities. So let's look at the message pillars in your message map. And again, these are taken directly from those blue boxes I showed a moment ago, but have just been blown out here. So here are your 3 message pillars. How do you bring communities together, like we talked about before? You do so with creating a critical safety net to prevent youth suicide. You empower youth, adults, and entire communities to act. And you advance the promising field of youth suicide prevention. Throughout all the 20 or some odd conversations we had, these were really the 3 key things that you all identified as crucial to the work that you do. And all we've really done is kind of make the language a little more succinct and share it with you now. So those, again, are your 3 message pillars. Creating a critical safety net to prevent youth suicide, empowering youth, adults, and entire communities to act, and advancing the promising field of suicide prevention. Now, the message pillars contain not only these big headlines, but also subtext that really prove the statements that we're making up here. So we really reinforce the message down here. Again, this is kind of the overarching statement, and this is how it's operationalized. And again, this is here for you to tweak and refine as you see fit. So what I'd like to do now is go through each message pillar, safety net, empowering communities, and read to you the full message. Oh, we're getting some feedback. Please mute their lines. Thank you. All right. Oh, not yet. Folks on the line, can you please mute? We're able to hear your conversation. There we go. All right, so that first pillar I was talking about, creating a critical safety net to prevent youth suicide, here is the language that comes with that. It is profoundly disturbing that 1 million plus young people attempt suicide every year, and even more think about it seriously. GLS grantees help create a suicide prevention safety net for young people at one of the most emotionally vulnerable times of their lives, build capacity for people to talk about and address suicidal thinking, and build awareness that suicide is not inevitable. So again, where we say GLS grantee, you can insert the name of your own program. And this is really the backup statement to this message right up here, to this pillar up here. So the next one, the next blue box, is about empowering youth, adults, and entire communities to act. And this message pillar says that through customized programs that meet the needs of the communities they serve, SAMHSA grantees together are building a national response to youth suicide. We connect communities, people, and services so that collaborative, coordinated, and effective action to prevent suicide can be taken, and ensure that we as a society never turn a blind eye to a young person's need. Finally, advancing the promising field of youth suicide prevention. SAMHSA grantees are pioneers in the relatively new field of youth suicide prevention, experimenting and establishing best practices, ensuring that the right infrastructure for suicide prevention are in place, and sharing what they learn so that young people have a better chance to live the long, healthy, happy lives they deserve. So those are your message pillars, which again fall right here. And we're not saying you need to use every single one in every single presentation or every single brochure that you have, but again, we're providing them here because if you want to talk about the safety net, if you want to talk about how you empower youth and young adults, and if you want to talk about how you advance the field, we've provided some language here for you. So let's talk about message pillars now. When might you use some of those message pillars? I'm going to ask you all again to type away some instances where you feel like, great, we've got your core message. When might be a good opportunity to expand that core message a little bit and share some of the message pillars and some of the communications that you put together? Go ahead and type some ideas that come to the top of your mind. On a website, yep, that's true. We also have in brochures. So that's absolutely right. A core message is probably not something that can fill an entire brochure, but message pillars can certainly bring in some other elements and some other content to a lengthier piece like a brochure. Presentations to stakeholders, again, absolutely right. When we're working with our partners, Debbie says, such as our schools and recruiting community trainers, really in any marketing material and in any opportunity you have to give a little bit more information and some more color around why your work is so important. Great. Again, if there are burning questions, please feel free to type them if there's something you, if we're losing you, we want to make sure we don't. All right, so let's move on here. So we've got the message platform again. We've got our core message, which is really the one thing you want everyone to know. Your message pillars, they help support that core message. They are the how do you do that justification for what you're saying in your core message. Now let's get down to these support and copy points. And this is kind of the part that I like the most because it allows for the most customization on your end. And it's located here. You'll notice that each of the message pillars have a series of supporting points that follow them. And that's because the supporting points that fall underneath each message pillar do just what the name says. They support this notion of creating a critical safety net, or empowering youth and young adults, or advancing the promising field. So if we want to define it, the support points really provide granular detail and proof or data about your messages. And they ensure that your messages just aren't empty claims. Anyone can say that they're the best thing since sliced bread, but if we can't prove it with our data or our stories, then we're simply making empty claims that anyone else can make. So the supporting points here really ground our messages in proof so that we're not only compellingly talking about our work in sort of beautiful, well-thought-out language, but also doing so in a way that we can back it up with data and with other anecdotes. And this is really the part of the map that I encourage grantees to tailor and tweak the most because it lends itself really nicely to you inserting the specific data points, the specific, the numbers that you have from your site, the impact that you've had, or the anecdotes or stories that you've been able to glean from the great work you've been doing in communities and on college campuses. So what I'd like to do is go back to our map for a moment and share with you each of the support points that follow the pillars. So we'll start with the safety net support points. And I won't read all of these because, again, you'll have them, but I will call one or two of them out. So, again, supporting points and support points are the place in this map where you can add your own local data and stories. And those that we've included here, you'll notice, are national points and sort of broad, really blanket statements about either suicide or the GLS program kind of generally. But we really do want you to adjust these to meet the numbers and the needs of your own work. So, for instance, if we're talking about creating a critical safety net and that we want to provide some additional support for that, we might use some of the messages in here, which say, one of them is an example, with increased awareness, effective prevention, and early intervention, suicide is far from inevitable. We can avoid the lasting human, social, and economic impact of youth suicide. So you'll see, we've got a couple here for you that, again, you can kind of cherry pick based on the situation. We don't anticipate that you would add every single one of these in here. And again, you might want to tweak to your own data. For instance, where we say suicide is the third leading cause of death among young people in the United States, you might want to put perhaps some local statistics or some data around the prevalence in your specific community or area. So the next support point is around the pillar of empowering youth and young adults. And here, we might say something like, grantees are given the flexibility to adapt their programs to the specific and unique needs and culture of their own communities. Or we might say something like, our work puts programs in place that otherwise wouldn't exist. We train adults and young people to recognize and respond to warning signs and build awareness about youth suicide prevention. And if we wanted to further tailor it, we could even end this by saying that we want to build awareness about youth suicide prevention in, and then put the name of your community or the name of your college campus or region or city in there, or state as well. So we really want these to be highly tailorable. And again, wherever you see GLS, you can feel free to swap in and out the name of your own initiative. So finally, last message pillar, advancing the promising field of youth suicide prevention. Some support and copy points for that fall here. And one example is, as a nation, we simply can't lose any more kids to suicide. SAMHSA's dedicated, determined, and resourceful grantees are leading the fight to promote health and well-being among adolescents and young adults and ensure that promising lives are lived out. So those are all the pieces of our message map, but that's not all. So in addition to developing that map that I shared earlier, we also have about 4 or 5 grantee-specific messages that will be shared with you in a separate document, but that, again, are specific to each of your programs. So when we talked to you all about a year and a half ago, we obtained a lot of really great information to talk about GLS broadly, but we also were acutely aware of the differences between the campus, the state, and the tribal programs, not only in who you serve, but in in what you've been asked to do, in the way you evaluate your work, in the types of people that you reach. And so we didn't want to just share one sort of master map and kind of let you have it and leave you hanging with tailoring it to yourself. So what we've done is also developed a series of additional message pillars that, again, we'll share with you under separate cover that speak to the specific work that you all do as either campus, state, or tribal grantees. So what I'd like to do is just very quickly share one of those, one of the 5 for each, so that you can get a sense of how the language that you're using and the overall tone that we're taking. So for campus, one of the messages that we put together is that your work addresses the 3rd leading cause of student death. And although suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among young people, most colleges and universities don't have a coordinated community-wide approach to prevention. And our work helps colleges fulfill their mission to educate and promote the success of all students by funding much-needed suicide prevention programs. So that is something, along with some of the other points that we have, that campus grantees specifically can use. Now, state folks, again, with the state message, this one in particular I've pulled out is similar, but I wanted to share it because I thought it was a good example of how we can really nuance some of the messages to meet the needs of the various programs and for each of your specific programs as well. So for state, we, again, are addressing the 3rd leading cause of death among young people. And suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death, and a startlingly large percentage of youth think about suicide each year. But we also know that these young people are most likely to seek help if they're encouraged to do so by someone else. So GLS grants help states build community capacity for talking about and addressing suicidal thinking in our youth. Tribal. Tribal grantees help ensure that communities look at prevention from a cultural perspective. They combine new evidence-based practices with centuries-old prevention programs based on Native traditions that are widely accepted and effective because they are so embedded in Native American life. So again, some of the words in here you might love, some you might not be so hot on, and that's okay. Our goal is really to provide you with a menu of choices and a menu from which you can choose and cherry pick which messages work for you. So that, very quickly, is our message map. And I do want to say sort of a final note on this before we move on and before I ask if there are questions. And that is that we again want you to think of this frankly hideous looking thing as a cheat sheet for yourself and for those who are on the ground, out in your communities and campuses talking about your work. The point of this tool, as I said earlier, isn't to pack every single message into all of your material. We don't want to overwhelm folks, and we're not sharing it in this format to overwhelm you either. We simply want you to see the full spectrum and the series of messages and all the available messaging that you have at your fingertips and that you can put in your communications to hopefully do a number of things, like we talked about earlier: raise awareness, build support, promote sustainability, and get folks to ultimately buy into the work that you're doing. We want you to take a look at this and kind of make it your own. Swap in your program's name wherever it seems appropriate. Add your specific data points into these support and copy points. And once you have that, share it with your staff. Share it with your teams so that people who are out in the community talking about your work can do so in a consistent way, and so that you can begin to build this sort of local brand around your specific program. If everyone's saying the same thing and if everyone is on message, you have a much higher chance of folks actually engaging in the work that you're doing and making a connection between the words that you're saying and the words that perhaps someone else on your staff is saying back to the work that you're specifically doing with your program. And in addition to that sort of local effort is the national coverage that we get from a map like this, so that SPRC and our team and SAMHSA can begin using this as well to really reverberate this great message about all the really impactful and wonderful things that you all are doing. Again, we'll share this with you in what we hope is an easy-to-manipulate format so that you can literally go in here and type and edit this thing as you see fit. So the one last thing I'd like to say before we stop for questions just temporarily is a really important reminder about any messages that you develop and really any media outreach that you do. And I don't want to put anyone from SPRC on the spot by asking them to speak up, but what I will say is that if you Google Safe Messaging SPRC and Safe Reporting SPRC, you'll be taken to these links. And we cannot stress enough the importance of not only in the messages that you develop as part of this message map, but that you develop as part of your program overall to make sure that you're ultimately being safe and effective. A lot of work has been, and a lot of thought has gone into ensuring that the messages we develop, especially around the very specific and very nuanced world of suicide prevention, doesn't do more harm than good. And Linda Langford, of course you can make a comment, Linda.
Hi, Christina.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. So just the one comment in terms of safe messaging is that I know that the message map provides a lot of different kinds of ways of talking about the problem, and some of us have been talking about kind of being careful about leading with too much of those kinds of statistics, because in terms of the safe messaging guidelines of making suicide seem kind of normal and common, sometimes bombarding people with a lot of those third leading cause of death and startlingly high and that kind of language can make people at risk think, oh, this is happening all the time and there must not be help available. So we've been sort of starting to talk about the importance of leading, making sure we're putting that help and hope message right out front, and then also letting people know that the problem is dire. But maybe sometimes more in terms of for specific communities, it might be we know that there are times when people aren't getting what they need, and so we're putting that in place. So there's other ways to frame the issue besides just the numbers, and I think that just so people have that range of options available.
Absolutely. That's a really great point. And I also think if anyone has listened to any of my other presentations and webinars, really your audience is going to dictate a lot of this, a lot of how you move forward. If you're talking to the public, if you're talking to those in your community, absolutely we need to make sure that we are not either normalizing or kind of overstating the issue here to ultimately do some harm. If we're talking to policymakers, for instance, some of that stronger language might be more appropriate because it's usually a single person, and we're trying to actually get them to understand that there is severity around this issue. But absolutely, Linda, it really is sort of a nice balance, and I think that folks will find referencing these safe messaging guidelines and the safe reporting guidelines could be a good tool and a good reference for them. Okay, I've done a lot of talking. Do folks have questions? Are we multitasking? Are we looking at email on our computers? We've shared a lot with you. Let me know what questions you all have. And you can either unmute your phone or feel free to type them in the chat box. I am just such a stellar presenter that you all are going to be experts on this.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi, I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Would you suggest that the message pillars would be more to be in addition to a core message that you're giving, or could the message pillars kind of stand on their own as well?
I think that's a really good question. You know, I think I think it depends on the situation and what feels right for you. For us, we see the core message as really this sort of singular statement that encapsulates everything that GLS stands for and why you matter. If you feel like you're speaking to an audience where you don't necessarily need that encapsulation, then I think the message pillars could stand on their own. It really depends on how you want to use this thing and what makes the most sense for the groups that you're working with. I think the beauty of this map, too, is that it's really up to you. I mean, you can pull and pluck and cherry pick from this as you see fit. Again, what we see as the value of the core message is that in sort of a singular statement, it really says, all right, here we are, and this is why we're important. And if you feel like that's something that you can speak to or speak around in another way, then certainly the message pillars could stand on their own. So folks are asking when the message map template will be available, and we're hoping to share it with you all shortly after this presentation. Again, I don't want to put the SPRC folks on the spot. In the past, our presentations have been posted on SPRC's website, but we also will be including this map in an upcoming resource that we'll be sharing with you, which I can talk about in just a moment if there are no other questions. Going once? Going twice? All right. So here's the third and final step of this webinar and of this process, and that is really understanding some of the communication tools that will be at your disposal in the near future. We just spent a good amount of time talking about and dissecting this message map. In a few weeks, we will be delivering a presentation. In fact, I will be your humble presenter as well on creating videos and how to create compelling, safe and effective videos around the work that you're doing to appeal to a variety of audiences. We know that video is a very powerful medium, and we know some grantees have started tinkering with that, and so we thought it would be helpful to share kind of some ins and outs and do's and don'ts for putting something visual together. So that'll take place August 22nd. And then we have, in this fall, coming out some grantee communication toolkits, which will be available to all grantees. It'll be online, and we'll also, if all goes according to plan, be able to distribute hard copies to you all and to mail them out to you. Let's take a little bit of a dive into what these toolkits are going to be about. And the reason this whole notion of a toolkit came about was that when we talked with you all about a year and a half or so ago, not only did we hear that you wanted messages, we also heard that something like a toolkit with some templates around communicating would be really helpful. And so we took your advice, and we've been working on it this past year, and we're putting some finishing touches on it now. I can share that we have 3 separate toolkits, one for each grant group, because again, we learned from working with you over the past few years that while you're all GLS grantees, you do have very specific audiences, very specific needs, and the type of program that you work with and that you're working on dictates differences and nuances across the various programs. So we're developing a toolkit for each of the specific grant populations, and here's what it'll include. The first and foremost thing it will have is a strategic communication planning guide. If you've heard any of my presentations before, we have an 8-step communication planning process that we feel is the foundation for any strategic communication effort and really any effort that you do in terms of going out and talking to folks. So that will be in there. We have a guide to media outreach for do's and don'ts. Again, a lot of safe messaging and media guidelines. Suicide reporting guidelines are in there as well. And then we have a series of adjustable and customizable templates, from a fact sheet to talking points to this message map, and even a guide to creating an elevator speech. So we've got all these things kind of cooking, and we hope to have those distributed to you all in the next, sometime in the fall. We're really looking forward to it. So with that, I want to ask again if there are any final questions. And I did just, thanks to Linda, get an email address for posting all these materials online. So we will have these available to you as soon as we ultimately can. So are there any other questions that I can answer about anything that we've covered or anything outside of what we've covered? Let me ask you all a question. What's sort of the biggest value, if someone would share, would you all see in putting together and having a message map like this? And you can either type your response or just go ahead and unmute your phone. So what's the biggest value you see in a piece like this? Oh, we're bashful today. Consistent messaging. Thank you, Leah. Oh, help us stay focused and continue the efforts when the grant funding ends. Debbie says that. Thanks, Debbie. And Leslie, sustainability. Absolutely right. Are there any, do you foresee any challenges to perhaps adopting this or getting your staff to adopt it? No. I love it, Debbie. You can unmute and share your thoughts if you'd like. So we have Danny who says that his team has many volunteers and we have different programs that we work on. And this will allow for our volunteers to share appropriate messages around the specific program. Yep. Anything else, good, bad, or ugly around this? Another Debbie says that this is a terrific tool offering assistance to help us do crunch times, during crunch times, which seem more often all the time. Amen, Debbie. And tribal adaptations may really need to be tailored to local ways of speaking, absolutely. That very much is, that's a really good point, and why we hope that the map is something that you'll all be able to tailor and tweak and use. Now, registering for the video creation webinar, someone just asked where you can register for that. There was a listserv message that was sent out about the webinar, but who is that? Leah. Leah, we can send that to you. We might, if you can type in your address to us, we can make sure that you get that. Wonderful. It looks like John would like to get it too. You're a shy group. And you follow directions with typing. So any other questions or thoughts before I give you 30 minutes of your day back? Going once.
Christina, it was a great presentation. Thanks.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Now let me share my contact information here up on the screen pretty quickly. Call me, email me, or you can continue to, we'll keep this webinar up for a bit if you want to keep writing chats to us. We'll make sure that we get them and address any questions or concerns you all have. It's been just an ultimate pleasure putting this process together for you. I've been personally involved in it for for the past 2 years, so it feels great to be able to unveil it to you all and to hopefully see how you'll use it. I'm really excited about getting some feedback about its utility and areas for improvement and things like that. So I know it was a lot of content that we covered pretty quickly, and I appreciate you all staying so engaged. If there's anything you need from our end or our team, you have my contact information. And otherwise, we hope you'll join us again on the 22nd of August, and we'll be able to learn a little bit more about creating videos.